This is
Make It Plain.
Make It Plain. MIP.
With Masamela Matfumo.
Mark Thompson. Make It Plain. Get woke.
Once again, folks, it's Thursday. That means it's time for Thursday Coast with the founder and publisher of DailyKos, the founder of Civiqs with a Q, and the host of
DailyKos, The Brief.
The Brief. I'm getting my shows confused. I got so many shows. The Brief. The host of The Brief, Markos Moulitsas, once again with us on Make It Plain. Hey, buddy. Happy Thursday.
Happy Thursday. How are you doing?
I'm good. So it looks like Putin wanted a joint press conference, and the White House, I think, very smartly said no. You know, I mean, I think that was a smart decision on their part, don't you?
Yeah, for sure. And even before that, they, I don't know if you saw, but Biden made Putin wait. So yeah. Putin famously shows up late. It's a power move, right? Obviously, to make the other side wait. He made Donald Trump wait for an hour at their last summit. Donald was too stupid to realize that he was being played. And so I think that was two sort of power moves. One is to have Putin show up first, make him wait a while, and then make Putin go first at the press conference so then he could actually close out. So I think both ways was a bit of a power move. I think Putin obviously knows now that he's not dealing with a bunch of idiots. And I don't know if you saw it too, but he actually took a swipe at George Bush and Donald Trump in his statement. He said something like, it was a constructive talks, right? Same nonsense diplomatic speak for nothing happened, right? But it was constructive talks, and it's not like any lifelong friendships were made. Nobody gazed into anybody's soul, but so on. And of course, we all know that Donald Trump was obsessed with being friends with Putin. It's weirdly girl crush that he has on him. And then George Bush famously looked into Putin's soul way back in, he believe it was like 2001. So yeah, no, now he's dealing with somebody who knows his shit, and it's clear that we need to take a harder line towards Russia. Russia is a threat, not just to the international order, but also to American democracy itself.
How do you feel about Biden's overall performance at the G7? Obviously, it was a course correct the direction Trump had moved America during his term in terms of its stature in the world, America's stature in the world. Did Biden, do you think, do an effective job at bringing America back to where it's supposed to be in the eyes of the international community?
I think he started the process. If I'm the international community, I don't trust the United States. I mean, Donald Trump didn't lose by that much, given the idiocy of the Electoral College. The Republican Party is all in on Donald Trump and his disrespect of international norms. So you have one of the two parties, and very well, Republicans may take one or both chambers of Congress next November. So if I'm the world, I'm not feeling particularly comfortable with the United States. There is a temporary pause in the insanity that was Donald Trump. I don't think anybody has any reason to believe that the old, normalized, reliable America, with all its warts, let's not pretend that American foreign policy is all apple pie and puppies, but there was at least a certain consistency. And you knew that if you signed a treaty with the United States, that the United States would abide by that treaty. And Donald Trump shredded that expectation. And I don't think it's going to take a Joe Biden. I don't think there's anything Joe Biden can do to change that. I think what it's going to take is a opposition party or Republican Party that itself has moved back into normalcy. Like, for example, like Mitt Romney suddenly was in charge, right? Then you're okay. Then you can trust these people. You can't trust. I wouldn't trust America today. I mean, I do not trust America today.
Yeah. What are your thoughts about China? A lot of conversation about China, Markos, and the G7 preparing to go hard against China. What are your thoughts about that?
I mean, you're talking about two despotic regimes that violate human rights. They're not friends. They have been convenient. I want to colleagues in business world, right, by providing cheap labor for American manufactured goods. It feels like that's changing. For example, Apple is diversifying the countries that where its products are manufactured, including getting more things manufactured here in the United States. I think corporate America needs to realize, and I think you're seeing that happen, that shift, that it is dangerous to have put all our eggs in that basket. And so there's this dance because China needs those jobs, right? They got almost 2 billion people, if not 2 billion people already. And the last thing that government needs is restlessness, right? And the way to keep people happy is to give them jobs and to improve their quality of life. So they need that American and international investment. On the other hand, they are a nation of nationalists who are asserting themselves aggressively in Hong Kong, against Taiwan, the South China Sea. So you got all those sort of complicated geopolitical issues. And then you got all of their neighbors feeling a little anxious about that. And it's clear that the U.S. right now is wargaming conflict with China. I think it sees China as our biggest potential future enemy. The Pentagon budget actually shifted a great deal of money from the Army to the Navy, which is all China focused. So yeah, it's complicated. And what's really sort of distressing is that for the longest time, there was this idea that by opening up some of these countries like China economically, that sort of Western style democratic values would take hold. And instead, we've seen the opposite, right? And the Trump administration and its actions, this despotic action, sort of point to that direction, where China's values are actually the ones that seem to be on the rise internationally. And even with the tech giants, with allowing censorship on their platforms and turning over information on dissidents and that sort of thing. So we're in a little bit of an ugly point in history, I think, as sort of new technology and this communication opening up of the world clash against nationalism, racism, xenophobia, all the old hates. And what does that mean for countries like China, the United States, Russia, and so on?
Good point. I was with Bishop Barber in Charleston, West Virginia on Monday. Moral Monday March on Manchin, whose office in Charleston is in the West Virginia Lottery building. And a lot of people came out, talked to a number of people who were white, who were veterans, who are sick of Joe Manchin and see that he's not delivering to the people of Charleston and not at all to the people in the country. Plus, so there's this thing, I didn't know. People talk about this, all politics is local. He zips through town on the streets in a Porsche. Folk walking around poor in West Virginia, and he's flaunting, a Porsche. First, it was some confusion about whether it was a Porsche or a Maserati. So the people talked about it. Is it a Porsche or is it a Maserati? But whatever it is, I think they confirmed it was a Porsche. People are offended by the measures he's taking. Admittedly, most of these people were Democrats. They acknowledged, they spoke strongly about how he would not be there if it were not for them, as white Democrats and as black Democrats. Okay. And that Manchin is not attuned to or listening to the will of the people. And so that's an ongoing thing. And, he's clearly made himself the deal maker in all affairs. I think today he introduced more information on what he might be willing to compromise on when it comes to voting rights, but that's it.
That voting rights, his proposed voting rights bill is actually quite excellent, to be honest. It's not great. So? I mean, no. It's great over the status quo. It's not the best, but it bans partisan gerrymandering. It has automatic voter registration at the DMV when you get your license nationally. It mandates a 2-week early voting period. It makes Election Day a federal holiday. It allocates money to promote voting. Had a lot of good stuff. Didn't have everything that HR1 does and S1 have, right? It's not the full 100% wish list, but this goes a long way towards making it easier for people to vote and making it hard for states to limit the franchise. So, my whole thing right now is like, call it the Joe Manchin Voting Reform Act or whatever you want to call it. Name it after him. Then let's see what happens when Republicans start filibustering it. And does he, at that point, decide to make a move on the filibuster? Because that's the thing. Whatever Joe Manchin thinks about this bill, it doesn't mean squat because it's going to get filibustered. So the question is, what's he going to do once it's filibustered? And he has a lot of skin in the game now. He's outlined what he wants to see. And Mark, this really is a step forward. Just the gerrymandering ban alone is massive. That right there is huge. That could cost Republicans 30 seats easy. So I think that's fine. Now, we've talked about Joe Manchin before. I'm not a Joe Manchin apologist, but I am very cognizant of his reality. And all the Democrats in West Virginia can complain about Joe Manchin and how Manchin needs them. But the fact is that there's about 30% of Democrats in West Virginia. Democrats by themselves aren't going to get anybody elected in West Virginia. That's just the cold, hard political reality of the situation. And so my approach with Manchin, remember, Donald Trump won West Virginia by 40 points. It was 70-30, Donald Trump. So my problem with Manchin is when he does things he opposes things that are popular with everybody, including Republicans. That's the crap that gets obnoxious. And of course, it's like peacocking and making himself the center of everybody's attention. And that stuff can be obnoxious. But electorally, I get it. He's in a tough place. And so he's not going to cater to a Democratic minority in the state when they're not going to get him elected. So he needs to do, and the problem is, Mark, he's won so many elections, right? So it just sort of reinforces this. He thinks what he's doing is working, and it probably is. That's the messed up part.
More MIP after this message.
Hey peeps, it's your girl, Danielle Moody, host of Woke AF Daily. Every weekday, I'm sounding the alarm and keeping you woke to all the pure evil that is going on in our country. Check me out now at patreon.com/wokeaf. Get 5 new shows every week for just $5 a month. Get woke and stay woke as fuck.
Part of the flaws, and I'm just being able to kind of review this. Universal voter ID is a problem. That's in the bill.
But wait, hold on. It also allows using things like utility bills as evidence. Of residency in identity. So it doesn't have to be a physical. And voter ID, I mean, I would love to see like an analysis. Are there people who don't have ID, but also don't have a utility bill, don't have a bank statement, don't have anything else that has their name and their address on there? And in any case, ID should be given out for free. I mean, that would be the other piece. If it's in any way, there should be something that these individuals should be able to show. And if they're not able to do so, then you provide it for free. I mean, that has to be part of it. But in the end, voter ID is probably, I think he's threw it in there because he thinks he's going to get Republicans to come along. That it'll be the concession to Republicans to get 10 of them to come along. It's not going to happen, obviously. The gerrymandering portion is massive. It is dramatic, and it really, really cuts to a major Republican advantage. Do you see anything else in there that's problematic? Yeah. There's some stuff on the John Lewis stuff that I didn't understand. I had to dig into it a little bit more. I haven't had a chance.
Barring no excuse absentee voting.
No, it doesn't bar it. It doesn't it doesn't require it. So California can still have it. Washington, whatever. Any state can have it. The HR1 S1 requires it. Like it would require every state to have no excuse absentee voting. He basically said, I don't want that part in there. He also took out a provision that would bar states from purging their voter rolls. But Mark, those are status quo items. He's not removing rights. That's just stuff that Democrats try to include to make it easier to vote, and he just took them out.
Right.
So this is a step forward. It's not the whole trip. You know what I'm saying? It's incremental.
He claims he 60 votes on this.
He claims he's got 60.
He claims he can get 60. I mean, he claims he can get 60 votes.
All right. If he can get 60, great. Good for him.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously, if he can get 60 on this, I will absolutely laud his tactical, persuasive skills. I don't believe it in a second. I don't believe he's got more than 2. Because why would they? Why would Republicans give up an advantage of maybe 30 seats in the House from gerrymandering?
Well,
it
but
literally makes no sense.
The other thing, too, that is unresolved, what was taken out of the original Voting Rights Act, and that is pre-clearance. And
yeah, there's some pre-clearance stuff in there that I don't quite understand. That I haven't dug into. That doesn't look great. But it's gone right now. There's no pre-clearance right now anyway.
And that's the problem. That's what the Supreme Court took out, that we were trying to get back.
Right. So what I'm saying is that it's that obviously the Democratic bill, the For the People Act, is far more comprehensive than this. It includes a ton of stuff, right?
Right.
Manchin came in and says, I agree with maybe 50% of it. This is the 50% of it. And we'll throw in some voter ID requirement because maybe that'll get 10 Republicans in his mind. He won't, but maybe that's what he thinks. And so this is one of those questions where, we either get nothing or we get a ban on partisan gerrymandering. I mean, that alone is almost worth the price of admission. And there's actually some good stuff in there. So it is much better than the status quo. And it actually goes a long way towards mitigating a lot of the voter suppression tactics that Republicans are trying to implement because they can't win a fair fight. Doesn't go all the way, but we know that we're not going to go all the way on anything as long as we have Manchin, calling the shots. We need a filibuster-proof majority. That doesn't mean 60 anymore. It means we need to get 54, 55 Democrats elected. That'll eliminate the filibuster, render Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema irrelevant, and then we can get the rest of the good stuff. That's just a political reality of a 50-50 Senate.
Meanwhile, Kyrsten Sinema not only skipped the Senate vote on January 6th commission, she skipped a meeting with Texas Democrats to discuss passing voting rights legislation, and she skipped Vice President Harris's luncheon for all women senators, where everyone but one Republican attended. Sinema stepped out on that. Meanwhile, there's more evidence that it's the U.S. Chamber that is backing Manchin and Sinema with campaign contributions. So we talk about Manchin, but what is Sinema doing?
I don't know. Manchin, you just heard me. I've defended Manchin because he's in the 40-point Trump state. There's literally no reason for Sinema to be Sinema. And Civiqs polling has shown her popularity plummet since she voted against the minimum wage hike. Her fellow Democrat, Mark Kelly in Arizona, his popularity rose after he voted for that. He is popular. She is not. I don't know if she can win a general election today. I really don't think she's going to win a primary. And Mark, I have Congressman Ruben Gallego joining me on the brief in 2 weeks. So, I'll be asking whether he's ready for a primary challenge, because he'd be a natural primary challenger against Kyrsten Sinema. There might be multiple, which wouldn't be ideal, but I think there's going to be a lot of appetite. She's acting as though she represents Barry Goldwater's Arizona. And that Arizona is gone, right? Where it's now a 50-50 state. It's now a battleground. It's literally 50-50. She doesn't need to act like Republican. She needs Republicans to win. She doesn't need Republicans to win. She needs to motivate Democrats. Republicans are never going to like her. But Mark, you know what? There's something else there. I mean, clearly she's not doing the political math. She's not looking at the polls. None of them are doing her any favors. I don't think there's something off about Sinema. And I'm saying, there is just, it just came out that she got injured doing a ultra marathon. I bet you 100% she missed that vote because she was training for this marathon. Like, I don't think her head is in the game, because I don't know how you train for an ultra marathon being a senator without, I guess, missing a lot of votes. And I wish, I can't get to it easily right now, but when she missed that vote, when she missed the commission vote, her spokesperson did not soften. There's a way to say, like, she had a family commitment or a family emergency, right? Boom, it would have been over. The spokesperson's like, she wasn't available. I mean, it was very cold. It was sort of like, it made me think like, this is not a staff that is working to protect their senator. There's something off. There's just something not quite right with Sinema right now. And I don't mean this. I know it. I don't want to diagnose her or anything else. I don't think. I just she's not acting rationally any way possible. Manchin acts rationally. You can go down everybody in Congress and look at their votes and their actions. You go, okay, that makes sense because X, Y, Z. She's not making any sense right now. And it's not even about bipartisanship because she skipped that luncheon, right? She skipped the luncheon which was literally a bipartisan women senator luncheon with Harris, and almost everybody showed up. So there's something weird. And it might be something legit. I'm not saying this is nefarious, but there's something happening that they're not talking about, and that it makes her not present.
Interesting.
So
That's interesting. I hadn't thought about it. Yeah, you may be right. Sometimes strange behavior is best described and analyzed by calling it what it is, strange. So that's interesting.
Yeah, and I just want to make sure that I'm not getting into sexist behavior. I'm not. This is not anything having to do with any biases, right? It's just irrational behavior. Does not make sense. Does not follow any dictated logic that you would expect from anything. And her own staff doesn't seem to be clued into it either, because they're not trying to explain why she's missing these votes and why she's not present.
More MIP after this message. I give you this. It's a term that I've used more and more in my middle age, which kind of encapsulates what you're talking about. Things, and I like the word. It's an objective way of looking at something like this without showing any bias, I would think. I mean, it is what it is. The term I use is incomprehensible. I apply that more and more into most situations. It's just incomprehensible, and and I didn't know about the marathon thing. That's interesting. That's real interesting. And I didn't know about the staff. You informed me about what the staff was doing. Yeah, that's weird.
Yeah, and again, like, I don't even want to imply that it's anything having to do with mental illness. It's no, because who knows? Right. And that's a good word, Mark. Incomprehensible, because it doesn't make sense. And there could be a very rational explanation in the end of the day. It could be a sick family member that she's attending to, but doesn't want to make a big deal out of, right? I mean, there's things that could be happening that could explain it. But given the lack of information right now, there's no, it's incomprehensible. Yeah, that works.
Yeah. Lastly, anything interesting going on at Civiqs that you all have had a chance to look at?
We're in a very stable period. I mean, one of the things that I've been really fascinated by is just Joe Biden's, the fact that he's remaining popular despite the, this huge split in our country, right, between right and left. And I would suspect, Mark, that, I mean, we know Republicans are seeing this. We know that they're not going after Joe Biden. You look at Fox News, they're not touching Joe Biden, right? They'll harp on forever on critical race theory and on the black woman vice president who won't go to the border, right? They'll spend hours and hours and hours talking about that stuff. They don't touch Joe Biden. I'm actually convinced, because if you also then look at the popularity of things like the infrastructure bill or the rescue plan, they're incredibly popular. I suspect that there's a bunch of people who actually agree with what Joe Biden is doing, but can't say that they support Joe Biden because they're conditioned to say that they oppose Democrats. But it is absolutely fascinating to me how resilient Biden has been. And whatever they're doing, they're, I think maybe just being white dude, right? That may be all he needed to be. Like, he was born, he was born white, and then he got old and male, and that's all he needs to protect them from the modern Republican machine. But it is something that they're going hard after Kamala Harris and the squad, and in nonsense, critical race theory, and in nonsense like Dr. Seuss, because they can't touch Joe Biden. And this is going to be actually really important, because midterm elections have never been kind to incumbent presidents, because it becomes a referendum on that president. And yet right now we don't have an organized opposition. We don't have a Tea Party. We don't have a resistance. There's nothing. There's Q, but Q is always out there being crazy, right?
Yeah.
There's no organized opposition to Joe Biden. Fox News isn't even trying. They've given up whatsoever. And with Donald Trump now hitting the campaign trail and making things all about himself again and relitigating 2020, that if 2022 becomes another referendum on Trump, and this is what they seem to be going for, I'm starting to like our chances better and better. So that's what I'm really paying attention in the polling. Are they able to land any blows on Joe Biden? The answer is no. And so if if the election's not about Joe Biden, what's it going to be about? Donald Trump, because he's going to be everywhere.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Markos Moulitsas, Civiqs with a Q, DailyKos, The Brief, all of the above. Check it out. You want to get involved. 3 institutions that he has built that are changing the conversation in the progressive landscape, have always done that way. You should be involved in the conversation by joining all 3. Thank you, Markos, as always, buddy.
Thank you so much. Yep, have it great. And no more mask restrictions in California. This is going to, and I think you guys heard the same way, right? New York?
Yeah. But wait a minute.
Mostly.
I just did an interview yesterday with a deputy director at the CDC talking about this new Delta variant. So I'm like, whoa, what's going on? He said that people been vaccinated don't have to worry about this variant.
Okay.
But he also said, Markos, they don't know how long the vaccines will last. They haven't made a decision yet. And I'm not saying this to discourage people. In fact, what he was saying, get the vaccine so that you are protected against the variant. Because some folks have leveled off. They feel like, oh, everybody else has gotten it. We're cool. Everything's opening. It's safe.
Right.
No, he's saying people, they're letting people know, no, this is variant out here. You need to still get vaccinated. So that's number one. But what he also said, because I asked him about while I had him, I stretched it. I asked a couple questions I didn't get permission to ask. I was like, well, is there going to be, will we need a booster? He said they honestly don't know yet. They're not sure yet how long the current vaccinations will last. But I asked him also down the road, I said, are we living with this from now on? Like the flu? Is this? And he said, yes, probably so. That COVID will always be with us. And that, we need to acknowledge there may be other things like COVID that are out there, but this is the new reality for humankind.
Yeah, Moderna said that they were developing a booster that was both flu and COVID. So it might just even be a single shot and everything's just thrown in for good measure, which would be inoffensive. And yeah, we're going to be living with this thing. I mean, I know people that got vaccinated that got sick, right? So when they say 92% effective, it's not, it literally is not 100% effective, right?
It's really
92%. So this is why it's so important to get everybody vaccinated to prevent this virus from floating around. I know New York's doing a good job of it. California's doing a good job of it. Places like Arkansas and Louisiana are not doing a good job of it. So we may have a situation where those red counties are just, people keep dying in those red counties because of the stupidity of refusal to do the vaccine. So I kind of feel bad for them, but I'm getting to a point now where I feel less and less bad for people. Vaccinate or like suffer the consequences. It is what it is.
I was surprised in West Virginia, people were still pretty disciplined. It's not fully open yet. And I saw masks. I saw people really working hard at keeping their distance in West Virginia.
No, you were in Charleston though, right? So maybe if you went out to the rurals, I mean, it might be a different story. I think cities in general, people are more conscientious of our neighbors if you live in the city.
Yeah, and a lot of people were closing businesses early and whatnot. Rode around with a driver who just was a font. I mean, I could almost go back and do a whole documentary talking to him. He talked about crime, poverty, opioids, and heroin in West Virginia, and I was like,
"Oh my God, it's one of the poorest states."
Yeah, he talked about how West Virginia is rough, y'all. They call it heaven. It's beautiful. I'm not gonna, those hills and mountains. I mean, it's breathtaking to see. But what was overshadowing me, just hearing the stories that people were sharing about their experiences and just how bad folk are.
Right.
Bad off folk are in West Virginia. I was like, there was one other big city. There's only 2 big cities. One of them, I can't think of the name of it right now. Charleston, whatever the other one is. The Uber driver was telling me about how much heroin is there.
Oh, right.
So.
No, it's pretty.
And see, that came up. It wasn't just about the partisan politics. People were saying that they have needs in the state that are just not being met. everyday needs.
Yeah, but then there's direct correlation between opioid use and Trump vote percentage. Like the more,
Right.
and it's hopelessness. This is what Trump really tapped into, was hopelessness. And you know what? Your life sucks, so let's just hate on people. Let's just beat up on somebody else. It's like the bully. It's a traditional bully, where your life at home sucks because you're getting beat or neglected by your parents. So you're gonna go and take it out on some poor nerd at school. That's what I think that's what that is. It's that hopelessness. But yeah, no, I've never been to West Virginia, and I want to. So one of these days, I'll find my way over there once they vaccinate, I guess. Not quite yet. All right, Mark. Thanks so much.
Thursday Coast, folks. That's Thursday Coast. Thanks for getting woke and listening to Make It Plain. Please remember to listen, like, and wherever you get your podcasts, please give the show a 5-star rating. And please do spread the word. Let's all continue to pray for each other during this pandemic and this police-demic. If all hearts and minds are clear, it has been made plain.